So I just got either Ohio, Kentucky, or Michigan as 3 options, and found out about 5 days before I flew out, I think, where I was heading. So that's how the exchange started. I didn't know much about Michigan when I heard about it.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Life Exchange Stories of Understanding. I'm your host, Kelsey Ross, and today we are joined by a very special guest. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the listeners?
Hi, my name is Julika Enslin. I did a YFU exchange in the U.S. in Michigan in 2012, 2013, and I'm happy to be on the podcast.
Julika, I'm so happy to have you here. I'm so excited to hear about your exchange experience and your time in Michigan, and I'm happy to see that you're repping the right team.
Definitely. You know how to say it.
No bias here at all, obviously. I would like to start. I'm curious how the idea of studying abroad first came to you.
Yes. So at the time I was 15. I'm from Germany originally, and from kind of the middle of Germany, nearby Frankfurt. I'm from a little bit outside of the city, and I think I was always really curious about different cultures, and I also really enjoyed English at the time, and that was where I first got the idea of, well, I would really love to study abroad for a year in high school. And then I started looking into YFU, and I really loved the program and decided, oh, I'd love to go. How I ended up in Michigan is kind of more of a surprise because they don't tell you. I don't know if that's still the case. It probably is, but they didn't at the time. So I just got either Ohio, Kentucky, or Michigan as 3 options, and found out about 5 days before I flew out, I think, where I was heading. So that's how the exchange started.
Okay. And I'm curious. I also am curious about what's it about YFU that made you choose this exchange organization versus another organization?
I actually remember having a really good conversation with someone from YFU at one of they have little fairs sometimes in Germany where they have different organizations being present, and I don't remember her name, but I remember having a really great conversation with the person from YFU at one of those fairs, and she gave me a really good feeling about what the program offered in terms of also support when you're in the US, how they interact with host families and how they select them. So I think it just gave me an all-around good feeling from the beginning.
Gotcha. And I'm glad that somebody was there to help relieve some of that anxiety and help you feel like you were going to be supported. It's a big choice, and it's really a huge, scary decision in so many ways for so many reasons. And support is so super important. And I'm glad that you were able to feel like you were going to be supported. And I hope you were supported during your time here.
This was my first flight without my parents or anyone. So I remember it was really cool that all the YFU people from Frankfurt, we were a group at least, who went to Chicago. And then I think I was only maybe 2 or 3 of us on the flight to Chicago, Detroit. But it was definitely, I didn't feel alone at all. And I was a little bit nervous in the beginning, but it slowly faded away.
Great. And you'd said it was a choice between Michigan, Ohio, and Kentucky, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that's probably when you were thinking of going on exchange in the United States, those probably weren't the top destinations you thought of. I can say that being here in Michigan myself, I understand. Even though we are great, we're literally Great Lakes State.
Exactly.
So, but I'm curious if you had any sort of expectations or certain locations that you were hoping that you would be placed in.
I have to admit, I think I had a lot of preconceptions about the coasts, because those are the ones that are most on TV, and those are the ones I think people abroad know most about. But I also at the time was a huge fan of the TV show Glee. I have to admit,
yes, okay,
which played in Ohio and was still on TV. So I did know a little bit about Ohio. So I thought, I didn't know, but what do you think you know? So I wasn't totally opposed to the idea. And I thought it was kind of interesting because I didn't have any expectations because I didn't know much about Michigan when I heard about it first. I'd heard about Detroit, but I'd never really heard much about Ann Arbor, which is where I ended up, and the University of Michigan. And it was a great fit because I think I went in just being very open, being very curious, and not having seen 100 movies about the place. Which is I think was a great outcome in the end.
And with you being a Glee fan like I was, Is there a favorite song from the Glee
Ooh.
show that you really like and played on your playlist on your way here?
That's a good question. I do I think the I Kissed a Girl from I do like that.
Yeah,
I
that was a
did
great
go
one.
while in Michigan because Darren Criss, who's on the show, I mean, this is very niche, went to the University of Michigan, so I did go to his concert
Right.
while I was on exchange, which was definitely a great time because he
I
played
totally
in the
forgot.
theater. Yeah, and he played that song too, so that's why I think it always was one of my favorites.
His character was always one of my favorites too. He was absolutely, I loved Kurt and Blaine. They were two of my absolute favorite characters in the whole show. Sorry, I'm done gleeking out now. Okay.
Whereas that's such a throwback sometimes.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. Glee. But so if I recall correctly, you had said you heard about where you were going, and then 5 days later you're hopping on a plane, correct?
Yeah, basically, it's kind of around a week-ish time frame. But I got a email about my host family, kind of an introductory email about who they are, and I think we Skyped at the time like two or
Okay.
three times maybe.
Yeah.
Which was great just to get to know them and know where I'm going.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty short notice, I think, which is why I didn't know for a long time it was going to be Michigan.
Yeah. No, it's that's not totally uncommon to hear that it may be just a matter of days before you find you got your host family and then you're hopping on a plane to go where you're going. So for exchange students or future exchange students who find themselves in that same situation, how did you handle that such a quick turnaround and having to prepare so fast and kind of the whirlwind of it all? Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, I mean, it's also easier said now than when you're in the situation, but I also would say that it always works out.
Yeah.
So I would say like, try to keep your nerves calm. And I tried to, for example, already start thinking about presents that I could bring regardless of who it was. I mean, that's hard to say because of course you want to be specific, but sometimes there's like a good cookbook from your area, or you can start collecting photos about your life, making a photo album, and then you can bring it to your host family no matter who it is. So I feel like I started distracting myself with like errands I could run and just not thinking about there was an email incoming and checking your phone so many times or computer at the time. Yeah. But I would say it works out in the end, and trust the process basically.
Yeah. Sounds like a very positive, upbeat, and optimistic mindset that you have.
Yeah.
I feel from talking to other alumni, that's a very important thing to have when you're on exchange. Seems like you had it right from the get-go, which is fantastic. And so that moment when you finally did find out you have your host family and someone has chosen you to be their student for a year, what was that feeling like? Do you remember any emotions that stood out to you at that time?
Yeah, I was extremely excited. I think I was jumping down. I think there are very few moments. I think I could probably count on one hand the moments where I was that excited. So I definitely remember being very excited about having a host brother, and they had a dog. I'd never had a dog. My dad has a lot of my dad here in Germany has a lot of allergies, so we'd never had a dog, and I was very excited about this. A Labradoodle. I googled it. Looked really cute.
Yes, they're so cute.
And yeah, I remember I was very excited just to get to know them. And yeah, I think that also kicked away the being nervous maybe about leaving. And yeah.
Labradoodles are so adorable. I love them. And they're
So
hypoallergenic
cute.
from what I understand for the most part too.
That's true. And I think he's not losing any hair. And he's still around too. I think he was 4 at the time when I got there, and he's now in his senior citizen days as a Labradoodle.
Sweet baby. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And you mentioned host brother. Was this your first time having a sibling or having a brother?
I actually do have a brother in Germany as well.
Okay.
Both younger. In the US, I technically have 2. Just one was at home and one already went away for college. So I didn't meet him immediately when I got to the US.
Gotcha.
But they're both really nice. And I never had an older brother as well. So that was a great experience. And I did have one in Germany, which I think why it kind of felt familiar in a sense. You already know you're going to have a sibling, and that's great.
Going back a tiny bit, you had said you'd had the preconceived notions from watching media and kind of having more of an idea of what the coast of the United States was like. So when you did arrive to Michigan, how did you kind of wrestle with it being pretty different than those notions had helped you expect?
Yeah, I think it was interesting. I think when I first arrived, I remember, I think my first or second day, I went to field hockey practice because it was kind of preseason, and I joined the team, and I think I was just thrown right into it. So I didn't have a ton of time to really think about a lot of things, but
Mm-hmm.
I think sports in particular was one of the first things I noticed. Well, there's like a huge emphasis on sport on the university level, but also like, of course, like in sports in high school. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I just realized how much detail you also miss when you look at it from a media perspective, like how many small things you never really think about, or what some of the houses in the neighborhoods look like, or how do people get around, or Ann Arbor had a bus, but usually a lot of cities don't.
Yeah.
So I feel like a lot of the little details that you kind of start piecing together, and that's why I really enjoyed just the host family experience, because I think at the beginning I probably was like just a question machine who just asked a lot of questions, which was great. But yeah, I think Michigan was very interesting. It was very hot when I got there in August.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I mean, everybody kept telling me it's going to be really cold in the winter. So it was definitely a lot of new experiences.
Oh, yeah. And Ann Arbor is a fantastic city to be in. Absolutely. It's very, very modern, lots of great public transit, lots of stuff to do. So in that regard, you were really lucky in where you were placed.
Exactly. And I
Speaking
love Ann
of-
Arbor.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. And speaking of the host family experience, walk me through that moment when you first got to finally meet your host family in person.
Yeah. So I think the first time I arrived, and then I stayed with my area rep for one night because my host family was still on vacations, and that I got to meet them the next day, which honestly on my end it was great because I had time to freshen up. Everybody else on the plane was kind of worried about being in their sweatpants and super clothes, and I was like, I have a day to figure this out. No, but I was really excited, and they were very, very welcoming from the beginning, and I think that's the great thing, and we're still in contact, and I'm sure we're going to get into it later, but I've seen them almost every year since, and so it's been great to get to know them, and I think there's just different character traits in every person that I kind of click with and that I really enjoyed having as a family.
Fantastic. And for exchange students who may be arriving here and are worried about showing up in sweatpants and maybe not looking their best, let me assure you, we get it. Your host family will understand. It's a long day of traveling. They're going to be understanding if you're not the most talkative or you don't look necessarily what you feel is your best. It's okay.
Exactly.
Give yourself some grace, cut yourself some slack. You just
and there's a lot more people in sweatpants than you think. So.
Yes, exactly. You are not going to stand out for being in sweats, especially not in the United States. Love our sweats.
Exactly. No worries at all. Should have had no worries.
Nah. So, you ended up with your area rep for the day. You meet your host family. You're starting to settle in. They get you enrolled in school, and you said you immediately started with field hockey. Had you played field hockey before coming here?
Yes. So I'd played in Germany, which is why I thought it would be great to join the team, kind of to meet people. I think that's always a great way. And they practiced every day, I think, every day after school. So it was very like intense. I'd never had that. In Germany, it's usually like 2 or 3 times per week, maybe depending on like what level you're playing at or how serious you are about it. And definitely not every day. And it's also not as school centric, more like club city centric. So I really enjoyed it to kind of already knowing some people at the school a week before, which was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people my age, so that was a good start. Definitely very intense, very sore week, but it was definitely worth it.
Awesome. And so you'd mentioned a little bit of the differences between how sports work in the US versus how they do in Germany. Were there any other differences that you noticed with your time at your American high school that were different than yours in Germany?
Yeah, I think I did definitely love that the high school kind of experience is a lot more inclusive in the US. I think it's very interesting. And in Germany, you separate out. So you have different tracks of people who go to 12th grade, people who go to 10th grade, and people who go to 9th grade, and they're all in separate schools. So you you kind of separate after 5th grade, and then it's very complicated. So I won't go into too much detail, but it's kind of basically how you take an AP class and a regular class in the US, but you would have those in two separate schools from the beginning. So you can't really choose and you don't meet necessarily. So I think that's why the US experience was great, because you could take one class at a higher level and then maybe in another, you're more on the regular track, so to say. So I did like that. That was exciting because you got to meet people from all different backgrounds. And I think on a more whole experience difference, I would say I also realized that just what driving played as an importance. I think I was a lot more sometimes independent in Germany, in the sense that I just got on my bike or I got on public transit, and I'd already figured out a lot of things by myself at 15. And then in the US, I was a little bit more dependent sometimes on not getting a ride. And I think you also start figuring it out. And of course, it's just a measure of adjustment in the end, but definitely a difference, I would say.
Oh, yeah. With transportation and getting to places and having a bit less independence here in the States because of our reliance on driving in cars, I think that could be a pretty hard transition for some of the students when they get here. So do you have any tips on how you handled that and how you were able to find people to help you get from place to place?
Yeah, I think I tried to tag along as much as possible from whenever someone went anywhere. So I did love going to the grocery store with my host mom, loved Costco, loved the big store experience, the sample days. Or just if anyone ever went to like a museum, or at one point I went to like a musical with my host parents' friends in Detroit, I just tried to like kind of tag along a lot. And then I think I also tried to figure out later, once I got a little bit more comfortable, how could I maybe go on the bus to the city or how to walk to the city just by myself if I want to make it work, but also be understanding that like the host family might need some time to figure out, can you do it? Like how do you feel comfortable in the neighborhood to allow you to do it, basically?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that I got lucky. I was a junior in high school, and I did have a couple of friends who did have cars, or like what it was called, like a probationary license, basically, like the one you get. And so they were some of them were allowed to drive, just not at night. So they took me around to like ice cream places, or, we went places too. So that was good.
And just from hearing how you were able to like just help tag along to these different places with these different people, it sounds like you were really good at advocating for yourself and asking for the things that you wanted. And I find sometimes that other students don't necessarily have that same ability or confidence in themselves to do that. Was that something you had always had within you, or is that something that developed while you were on exchange?
That's a good question. I think a certain part probably already had it. I think a certain part also comes with, I think when you go on exchange, sometimes you realize in Germany, you have your whole routine, you have certain friends you're visiting on the weekends, you have not as much time as you think, or you're visiting family on another weekend or in the afternoon after school. And so I think when you're going on exchange, suddenly you have all this time also. I mean, it's not like you're not busy. You have school and you have sports, but then there's some time when you haven't figured out like who are your close friends yet. So I think something in me was like, okay, I'll just be curious and just find out what are the other people doing, and just go along as long as I don't have that yet. And I didn't want to spend too much time alone, just in my room waiting. And I think there was just too many interesting things going on around me that I thought I might as well ask people, are you interested in going to like a basketball game or a football game, or, and just trying to find people who would also love to do it. Yeah. And that worked out pretty well. But I think it's definitely kind of the necessity that accelerates that process of you trying to find things.
Yeah.
Or finding people that are happy to do this.
So, and going back a tiny bit to with your ability and the way that you really connected with your host family, and it sounds like a lot of people in your community within Ann Arbor. How did you go about trying to make these connections? I mean, being the new person, it can be pretty intimidating.
Yeah, that's true. And I would say I'm not 100% of an introvert. I'm probably in between spectrum looking back. Yeah. But at the time, also being 15, and I did speak English, but not to the extent that I do now. So I think there's always more hesitation sometimes because you're worried that someone's not going to understand you or misunderstand you. So probably more introverted than I am now. Yeah. So I would say it's difficult. And I think there's also part of you that needs to give yourself grace of there is some time that you just need to, you're not going to have friends the next day. And that's fine. And there's no reason for others to expect you to have that.
Mhm.
And I think I just try to concentrate of like what can I do for the next 2 weeks, kind of like on a short term, like going to sports and trying to, like if they had a team meeting or like team events, trying to join as many activities as possible and
Mhm.
trying to not leave basically any opportunities on the tables. And then trying to find connections there.
Mhm.
But also then in the end, yeah, finding ways to connect with your host family and just the family aspect of things, which I thought was always really, really important. And thankfully, my host family also has, on my host dad's side, a lot of cousins. So I got to hang out with them a lot during the holidays, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And were you able to find that connection with your host family right away, or was that something that you had to sort of develop over time?
Yeah, I would say I personally felt a connection right from the beginning,
Mhm.
just that I think we would get along well. I don't know, of course, 100% if that's the same on their end, but I would say I think um, I did know that we had a lot in common. I think a lot of interests, which
Mhm.
also really helped. I think at the time I was 2012, it was an election year. I was really
Mhm.
excited. I was very into politics and history. And this was the first time that I was going to be in the US for an election. Michigan was a swing state, a lot of
Mhm.
campaign ads, really exciting. We watched the debate.
Mhm.
So I thought that was something we shared, just the interest in public service and the political process. And then also just museums and learning more about the history, about the culture. So I think that really helps bond and form a relationship in those early days when you just have a lot of interests in common. And
Mhm.
yeah, I definitely had that with my host family.
Yeah. And for future students who are trying to navigate connecting with their host family and maybe don't feel that connection right off the bat, do you have any advice for them for trying to build that connection up and trying to find that common ground?
Yeah, I think it's always finding a good balance of trying to share some things about you and trying to open up in the sense that what are things that are interesting to you and what would you maybe also be interested in learning about the US, kind of showing interest maybe in the culture and the country, and then maybe also being interested in them personally, of course, like in their experience and trying to ask them questions about. I think it was also always really fascinating. I have the same feeling when I ask my parents or my grandparents in Germany questions, like finding out about their youth and what
Mhm.
life was like for them, sometimes in college or other steps of their life. And I think that can also really be great for a relationship if they don't have that immediate connection yet, just for the other side to see, oh, they're very interested. They're excited, that want to learn more about life here. And I think that opens up the door for a conversation, even if there's not a common interest initially.
Mhm.
So kind of finding a balance about opening up about yourself, asking others questions, just trying to kind of maybe tag along for a little bit to their hobbies and their interests, even if it's not 100% what you love. I think sometimes it can help you understand a person too. And that can be very, very helpful just for living together.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really great advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's going to be very helpful for students in the future to help bridge that gap a bit and make it a little less intimidating.
Definitely.
You had mentioned a few times going to different museums in the area and musical too. What were some of the museums that you were able to visit when you were in Michigan?
Yeah, so I remember the Detroit Art Museum I really loved,
Beautiful.
which is great. We went also to I think the Meyer Gardens there in, I want to say at Grand Rapids.
Grand Rapids?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes. Okay.
Not quite in Detroit. I remember
No.
we drove up there.
Mhm.
Did love that as well. I
Yeah.
mean, the University of Michigan also has the great art museum just
Mhm.
right by campus,
Mhm.
which we went to. And then we went to a couple productions from the university for theater, which was great. And we did also take a couple of trips to New York and DC and other cities. So that
Nice.
was really great for just the huge museums on a
Yeah.
grand scale.
Yeah.
But I think in Michigan, yeah, Ann Arbor has a lot of museums next to the university, which was perfect just also for trips. I remember with school we went to, at the time, not a museum, but we did go to the movies sometimes because The Great Gatsby was in theaters
Yeah.
and we read
Yep.
The Great Gatsby. So that was fun.
Awesome. Yeah, and it sounds like you were really able to go quite a few different places, which is great. Um, and musicals you'd mentioned, and so kind of bridging off of that, you mentioned that you did field hockey when you were in school here. Did you try your hand at drama or other extracurriculars while you were here?
Yes, so I feel that week was kind of the safe bet, basically. I'd already done it.
Yeah.
It was gonna go well. I was gonna hopefully meet friends.
Mhm.
But yeah, I did try on the sports end, I did try lacrosse in the spring, which was fun. I'd never done that, and it's not really as widely common, I would say, in Germany. So it was definitely something new. I did take a drama class, which I really enjoyed, which was very fun. I think what was most surprising to me as a hobby that I picked up, or which I hadn't really seen, I took also a creative writing class and did poetry slams, which was
Ooh.
very fun. I'd never done that before, and I'd never been to I'd been to like a German kind of like a poetry situation, but not a poetry slam in what it was in the US. So I really enjoyed that. I had a great teacher. And yeah, I think it really also helped me. I love writing. And I think in the beginning, I was a little bit self-conscious about, your way around words in one language and you're trying to find that in another. So I think Poetry Slam really helped me get over that fear and just get out there and try, and see that people are excited anyway for your writing and not judging.
That's so cool. Is poetry and poetry slam something that you still continue to do today?
More on the consumer end, I would say. I do still love to go to one. I don't write as much anymore, unfortunately. That's something I should probably look into as a hobby again. But I definitely do love still going from now and then.
Not to take the conversation into a sadder turn, but as fantastic of an experience as it sounds like you've had, I'm sure there were challenges along the way that you had to overcome. Would you be able to dive into a little bit of some of the tougher and harder stuff that you had to go through while you were on exchange and how you were able to overcome that?
Yeah, I think one of the ones we already touched on a little bit, I think I'm just in general a person who needs a little bit longer to make friends sometimes. I'm just someone who needs to get to know a person better before I can really feel closer or more comfortable and trust someone. I think it took me definitely more than a little bit than 6 months to really have a really good friend that I'm still also in contact with, but it just took a little bit more time, and I think there's people out there who it comes to very easily. And so I think there's always the issue of a lot of people compare themselves. And I would always just give people the advice of saying that everyone's different. And in the end, a lot of, or almost everyone makes friends. It's just different routes to get there. But of course, at the time, that's sometimes difficult to internalize because that's what you want. You want someone to also your own age to hang out with. And I think as much as I immediately clicked with my host family, I think I had a little bit more sometimes trouble, or not trouble, but challenges adjusting on like a peer level. But again, it worked out well in the end. It just takes some more time. And I think the other thing is what we touched on with languages, and just I always was like very good student in Germany, and I also was in the US, but I think it just takes a little bit of time to figuring out, there's a lot of things you don't know. There's no reason for you to know them. But coming from an experience where like you know the pop culture, or some of the the moderators on TV, or you know all those just general around the clock things on like a trivia game they would ask you, and then you come to a new place, and there's no reason for you to know all the children's books, but people look at you funny when you don't sometimes. And I think that's kind of, it takes like a little bit of an adjustment to realize like, okay, there's a lot to learn, and that's great, and you don't have to beat yourself up for not knowing this, and it's actually an opportunity to realize what else is out there. And kind of open up the book of, what else can you discover, basically.
Yeah, it's funny you touch on being okay with not knowing things and being wrong and learning as you go. I know that is something even to this day that I personally struggle with. So as a reminder to people out there and to myself listening in the future, it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to not know something. It's okay to admit you don't know something and to ask for more context. You're not going to know everything. It's totally fine, especially in a brand new environment like you found yourself in. How would you know the children's books? How would you know the shows that were popular like 10 years ago when kids were growing up? You have no concept of that. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes there is like the people assume, or when you come in as an exchange student, especially if you've seen like it a lot on TV, the high school movies, you assume like, okay, it's going to work out. It can fit in, I'm the same age. We have the same sports. But as you said, there's shows 10 years ago that everybody can laugh about and know the punchlines, and I've never seen them, I've never heard of them, and I have like a very different cultural context, and I think that's sometimes things you underestimate in the beginning of what is out there that you're just missing in the beginning. And of course, it's not really that you're missing it or that it's a problem at all, but it's just little things that you stumble across of where you realize, okay, there's a little bit more adjustment needed.
Yeah. It takes time. Was your host family able to help fill in some of those gaps or help with some of those challenges that you were facing throughout your exchange?
Definitely. I mean, I think they were always a good listening partner. And I also did ask them just for we watched a lot of classic movies, a lot of US classic movies.
Yeah.
And read a lot of classic books, which I really appreciated and enjoyed. I remember really fondly one time we had a power outage, which I'd also never had, which was very exciting to me at the time.
Ooh,
and we were reading the really exciting part about Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn by candlelight. Yeah. And yeah, definitely. I think they really helped me across along the way.
Awesome. And of course, there was context of culture, pop culture here in the United States that you didn't have, but we don't necessarily know about pop culture in Germany or what's cool over there or some of the historical things. So were you able to share those bits of information and those bits of pop culture with the friends that you made in the host family that you have?
Yeah, definitely. I think I tried to bring it up often, and then also just it kind of goes along with like sharing who you are, what you're interested in. Some things, of course, translate universally, like sports, more universally at least, and then some are more specific or have like a country context to it.
Yeah,
and you have to explain a little more. But yeah, I remember my favorite movie at the time is a German movie, a really old one from the 50s. And I did bring my host family like a DVD where it's like with English subtitles. And we did watch it, and that was very fun.
Awesome.
Just to kind of share that as well.
Yeah, and kind of off topic, but totally still on topic. One of my favorite questions to ask the students who are going to Germany now, because they generally have no idea who we're talking about. Did people ask you what your opinion was of David Hasselhoff?
They did a lot. And I have to admit, I did not know him going into this, to the exchange. So that's also the funny thing. Like you learned a lot about like a lot of things that other people associate with Germany.
Yeah.
I get that a lot now too at like a college level. When I went to the grad school, a lot of people always wanted to know about techno clubs, and I've not been to techno clubs, just to share that right here. And it's interesting kind of to find out what other people associate with the country. Yeah.
And speaking about that, I'm sure you had to ask a lot of questions, or you had to answer a lot of questions about life in Germany and kind of deal with some of the stereotypes of Germany and German culture that we may have over here. Were there any moments of trying to explain a stereotype to a classmate or somebody in your time on exchange that really stood out to you?
Trying to think. I think actually not to a classmate, but I remember being one of my seed neighbors in U.S. history was another exchange student from Egypt, and we talked a lot about like the stereotypes of Germans are very rule followers sometimes, and sometimes if there's a rule, you can't. It's not happening. And I think it was a really interesting conversation because I later I think like 3 years ago went on exchange during undergrad to Egypt, and it really made me see that our conversation from a different light, because she talked about a lot of things when she said, like, no, if there's a way, if there's a rule, there's a way, kind of. And I said, no, if there's a rule, you can't do it. And I think I also realized, which is interesting, like as an exchange student, you always realize like there's certain stereotypes you kind of fit into, and then there's certain ones that are maybe overblown. And they come out in different waves, I would say.
Yeah.
But punctuality was another one. I'm personally not a very punctual person. Yeah. But Germans always have that stereotype. And I think to an extent, I still have that in me, that I at least know it's bad if I'm late. And I know that I shouldn't. I might still be late a couple of minutes. But I do know it's impolite, or considered very impolite in Germany.
Yeah.
Which, I think was interesting. I think, to be honest, in the U.S., I felt like it was very mixed. It wasn't that people were super early or super late. It kind of depended on the context, if you're like invited to more of a friend's house or a dinner. But anyway, those were some of that I remember.
Yeah. And with I mean, it's as much as we try to not let it happen, I'm sure you definitely come to the country you're going on exchange to with preconceived notions and stereotypes of the people that you're going to be encountering. So were there any stereotypes of the United States and people here that you had before coming here? And were there any that you found to be kind of true and any that you found to be not so true?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think a stereotype sometimes is in the US that and I think that is to a certain extent sometimes true, or
Mhm.
I've come to find out, but I think that's a very personal also
Yeah.
experience. I wouldn't project that as a, I think sometimes in Germany, for example, it's very hard to make, um, friends immediately also because people are more
Mhm.
distant.
Yeah.
And people can be a little bit more hesitant to be very inviting. And
Mhm.
then I found in the US, there's often a lot of invitations. And I think
Yeah.
you kind of have to figure out which ones are where people really want to invite you. And then where someone
Mhm.
just says, you'll come over anytime. And I think in the beginning, you're kind of trying to figure out, do they really want me to come over, or is this more of
Yeah.
of someone saying this? And
Mhm.
I think it's definitely a very nice. It's not necessarily like something negative. It's just
Mhm.
something where you have to navigate like the differences. I think a lot of Germans would never invite people, and then if
Hmm.
they do, they really mean it. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a difference in just There's a lot more probably to go to, but then once you're there, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's maybe one difference, but I think I really tried to, especially because I didn't know much about Michigan, go
Mhm.
into it without many stereotypes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely recommended. I know one of my favorite ones I hear is I heard even from like our partners at YFU, from our international partners, the stereotypes about Americans being very loud, which sometimes stereotypes are true for a reason. I know myself, I'm very loud. um, it's interesting having that perception of what you think a person from a certain country is going to be like versus what they're actually like and what's true and what's not true. So I always kind of enjoy figuring out what people notice and what people find to be true and not true.
That's true.
Anyway.
And I think when you're now in Germany and like trying there, sometimes when you play the game like find the American tourist, which is
Yes,
probably not the
yes,
greatest game, but that is
yes.
probably one of the indicators, the loudness or the
Yep.
athleisure wear.
Yep. Oh yeah, heard that one too. When I
Um,
was over in Europe for a conference, they told me about the Find the American Tourist game, and I started noticing myself play it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I am a stereotype. I'm a walking stereotype. People are finding me. Great. Not that it's
I
a bad
wonder,
thing.
do Americans have that game too? Can you find the European or like a German tourist?
So there are I would say there are some, one being the very rule following. I've noticed Germans tend to be have very good posture and stand up very
Oh,
straight. I also noticed like we also, and some of my other colleagues have mentioned, I've noticed too, them very kind of serious expressions on their face and
that's right.
and I wouldn't say it's harder to find somebody like playing, like find the German tourist. It's more once you are actually sitting down and talking to somebody, it's like, oh yeah, no, I can tell you are from Germany.
Yeah.
In my interactions with our German partners, very to the point, kind of a little more soft spoken, but not
hmm
rude or mean in any way, and very on time. Maybe I saw that you were a little bit ahead of me getting into the studio for the recording session. I'm like, German, very on time. Of
Yeah.
course, I am late. My bad. Stereotyping. That's not nice to do. That's not what we want to do.
No worries. I
It
fully
is
embrace it
amusing.
at this point.
But yeah, so I mean, there is sort of an American counterpart, like way of doing that, of finding the tourist, so to say. You can kind of just
Yeah.
tell when somebody is not born and grown into the culture, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just learning to immerse yourself, especially on exchange. I mean, as a tourist, you're not going to get really the chance to do that.
That's true.
But as an
I'm glad you
exchange
didn't
student,
say the socks and sandals situation because that's what usually people tell me that is how you find a
see,
German tourist.
I can't say that because I do that myself as well. So I guess that's not, I don't know if that's really something a lot of Americans do, but I myself am guilty of socks and sandals. So
Okay, that's good.
I can't talk bad.
Are you ready to see the world and gain a global perspective?
How did you know?
With YFU USA, you can study abroad and immerse yourself in a brand new culture, language, and way of life.
It's so much more than just an adventure. It's a chance to grow academically and personally.
Start your journey today by visiting yfuusa.org and find out how you can study abroad with YFU USA. So you had said also that your host dad had a lot of cousins in the area, so you were able to spend holidays together. Were there any new holiday traditions that you were able to experience with your host family, and are there any that you continue to do to this day?
Yeah, I'm trying to, I think they definitely, had a lot of big Thanksgiving dinners. And I think that's probably the holiday that I really remember most fondly. I think they're also a big board game family, which I had not, or it's way more fun with a lot of people. So I think it also, I've kind of carried that on too, which is not as US specific, but I definitely do love board games. And I think they always had a new one each year, kind of that they got as like a family gift. Often for Christmas or for Hanukkah or for the Thanksgiving. So that was great. I also really loved celebrating all the holidays. They're from different religious backgrounds, so I'm Christian and Jewish, and I also really enjoyed having both of those traditions. I'd never celebrated Jewish holidays before, which I really enjoyed, just getting to know more about that in like a cultural religious meaning. I think those
so
I remember
cool.
the most fond. And the food, of course. I mean,
Yes.
I would be lying if I didn't say and mention a good pumpkin pie or sweet potato casserole. So, but unfortunately, I'm not as great of a cook as my host family is. So I do mostly enjoy and do not, unfortunately, carry it on myself.
That is fair. Not everybody can be whipping up sweet potato casseroles and delicious foods like Julia Child or Guy Fieri. Total opposite ends of the spectrum there. Oh, well. So speaking of foods, do you have like a list of some of your favorites that you were able to try while you were here on exchange?
Yes, definitely. So, and they range, but I do love my host mom's lemon bars, like recipe. I think that is on the sweet side. Ann Arbor also has a great deli, Zingerman's Deli, that I really love, just like delis in general. I'm also vegetarian. I was vegetarian when I got to the US, and my host family was as well, which was really great. And which was super fun just to experience all different recipes on the vegetarian. I also do love Chipotle when it's like about going out, getting takeout food. Trying to think. I think from the holidays, Thanksgiving food, because of the sweet potatoes, is my favorite food. I do like a good savory sweet combination. I think bean burgers. I did have bean burgers for the first time in the US. Do like bean burgers, pickles, and fried pickles. Do love them both. Yeah, those are some of the. I'm probably missing a bunch. I also do like the ice cream a lot.
I love a good pickle. Sorry, now I want a pickle. So after this, I will be getting myself a nice dill pickle.
They're great. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
One of my host dad's brothers makes or ferments his own like the pickles, and he also makes the ghost pepper kind of ones, and they're delicious.
Ooh, okay. You a fan of spice then?
Yes. Although if you leave them, take the ones that have been there for a while, it's some work when you're eating them.
I envy all of you spice lovers. I have anything hotter than pepper and I am in pain.
Oh no.
I know. Yeah. I'm weak. But and kind of jumping forward a bit, because I do want to get to more of your life after exchange. So you had mentioned that you were able to keep that connection with your host family and some of your friends here. So how did you go about keeping that connection even when you were back home?
Yeah, I mean, also it's kind of a reminiscing about the time, because at the time I did I think have an iPhone, but one of the very, very early ones. So I didn't really use the same technology as you would probably today. But so it was a lot of emails, which is actually really fun to look back, because I have a lot of those still in my inbox. And I just try to send like an email every week or two about like updates and attached photos, which today would probably be more like on WhatsApp or text. But still kind of a similar concept. I also really enjoy writing postcards. So whenever I went somewhere, I sent like a more physical note. And then I think we Skyped like every second week or something like that. At the time, it was still Skype, but probably today on FaceTime. Which I really enjoy, just to see what they're up to and see
Mhm.
what's going on and changes are happening. And I think that worked really well. I think the first time I really went back
Mhm.
was in 2015.
Mhm.
So about 2 years after I left, which was
Mhm.
great. I took my grandparents from Germany and we went on a trip and also went to Michigan. So they got to meet them. So that was fun.
That's
Yeah.
so cool. So your host family and in YFU terms, your natural parents or natural family, you just said your grandparents were able to meet them. Were these two families able to connect and also form their own relationships and bonds with each other?
I think so on my German family side, my mom doesn't speak as much English, so it's a little bit more limited and it just needs a translator usually, which is totally fine. But I think that's why the interaction just in general usually went through me as an intermediary. My host dad actually sometimes he's a professor at the University of Michigan, and so he sometimes traveled for work, and he came to Germany. And I remember once we also met at my grandparents' house, and my parents were there, which was really fun, and my brother. So they got to meet. Definitely, my host mom, I think, has only met my dad because she went to Germany 2 years ago. But yeah, so I think that they definitely got to meet. But it's often also when I'm around.
Right. What sort of things did you get into after you left your exchange? And you mentioned going to see them again a couple of years after your exchange ended. Heard mentions of grad school and undergrad. So what happened to you after you finished exchange?
Yeah, that's it's interesting. I actually it's a long list, but so basically I graduated high school in Germany. That's when I took the trip with my grandparents. Was kind of my post-graduation trip.
Okay.
Before starting again, and I went for like kind of a Peace Corps equivalent in Germany that they have to Chile after high school.
Okay.
So I spent a year in Chile in like a rural elementary school, which was super fun, and picked up Spanish, a whole different language learning experience as well. But actually, I got to meet one of my YFU friends who was an exchange student from Chile in Santiago. So that was
cool.
just how small the world is, basically, because it's the other end of the world. But I got to meet two people from the US, one of my YFU friends, and the other one was someone I had met at the Michigan field hockey camp, who I also met. So that was great. Yeah, I came back. I started in Germany. You kind of start your major right away. There's no undeclared beginning part in the bachelor's. So I tried law for 2 semesters and then switched to political science because I decided it wasn't quite what I was looking for. But yeah, so I did my undergrad in political science and spent 2 semesters in Egypt as an exchange student. And I think that's something that is also kind of going through this as a pattern. I think my exchange in the US really encouraged me or kind of made me open up to trying to go to different places as well, and just seeing this as a first step. There's so much out there to discover, and kind of with Chile or with Egypt, and later going back for grad school to the US were kind of all these little things. And then in after Egypt, and I graduated from undergrad, and I applied to Georgetown to DC, and I went to grad school for 2 years for a master's. Which was really, really exciting. I enjoyed it. And it was also great to have a host family in the country because then you could go home for holidays when everybody else went home, It didn't feel quite as alone and figuring all these things out. Because, of course, I feel like that's also interesting. Like you're realizing you're back in the US, but it's a very different experience because you're not living with a host family and you're setting up your own bank account and you're figuring out how to do taxes and all those things you didn't have to worry about the first time around. And so suddenly you're like in an adult version of the US.
Yeah.
Looking at all these administrative things and having a social security number and all this. So but it's great to have a host family to ask questions and be able to, just call on the phone and talk about school and how things work. So that was great. And I got the chance to stay for 1 more year. The visa kind of allows for like 1 year of practical training after grad school. And so I went to West Point in New York for teaching for like a year, which was really exciting. Very different context again, but really enjoyed it. Yeah, and then I got back to Germany in May, and now I'm here again.
Whoa, okay.
All around tour.
Yeah, wow. So what was your master's degree studies in at Georgetown?
Foreign service. Yeah, I really loved their school of foreign service. It's great. They very practice oriented. I mean, with DC, there's so many people. A lot of my teachers were practitioners, so they were working in the State Department and teaching a class at night. So that was great.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, loved it.
Yeah, and go back to West Point. Yeah, I am very curious. I mean, I'm sure there's probably things you aren't able to talk about for security purposes and things like that, but how the heck did you end up there?
Yeah, I in my last 2 semesters or 3 semesters in grad school, I kind of focused on counterterrorism. And one of my professors in grad school, she recommended me for she kind of asked, like, what are you doing after graduation? Do you know where you're going at? And she recommended me to someone at West Point for their combating terrorism center, which is great because I've loved their publication for a long time. I've read it a lot throughout undergrad and grad school, so it was great to just be there and be part of the team suddenly.
Yeah,
and then I got to teach a class, which was really interesting to be on the other side of teaching.
Yeah, very casual light reading there.
Exactly. That's true. A lot of people say that. That's but yeah, it's definitely not. I think I kind of try to balance it out. There's a certain point where you just gotta lay down that reading and pick up something with humor. But yeah.
Yes. But has teaching something that you had always been interested in doing before that?
Yeah, I definitely have, and I taught a little bit before, just not as a course, like a full course director, basically, more at like a different sections as a teaching assistant and smaller classes at Georgetown, and also never at in a military context, which I think is also sometimes very different just from the audience. And but I definitely been interested in it, and I think it's always great as a perspective when you love the subject anyway to teach about something and kind of get someone else's input who's just learning about it for the first time, which is great.
Yeah. And what is it about the subject that you love so much?
I think to me it's really interesting. I think there's something fascinating about like how, I mean, this may sound strange too, but how radicalization works and how someone sometimes, in a sense, it can be anyone who, from like a profile perspective, who kind of gets into the wrong rabbit hole on the internet or personal connections, and then suddenly they're in a totally different spectrum that endorses violence. And I think there's something very interesting about thinking about how are organizations using that? How is the government or other civil society organizations, what opportunities do they have to kind of prevent or engage once it already started? I think that those are some of the topics that got me into it. And then, I started learning Arabic in undergrad. And I think that's also something that was really interesting to connect kind of from just being able to use read sources in like the original language sometimes.
Yeah. So that's what, 4 languages now?
Well, I would say people joke. I mean, I think English and German are the ones where it's like solid. I wouldn't have any issue. And then Spanish is kind of I did learn mostly, like, people would probably jokingly say street Spanish. I've not studied in Spanish. I don't know if I would write like a 20-page paper in Spanish right now, if that would go so well and sound so academic. But I can have a great conversation. I can understand anyone. I can understand music and TV, and there's no issue. And then Arabic is a little bit more on I can have a casual conversation, but not about inflation.
That's fair.
So more of a basic, what did you do yesterday kind of thing. Yeah.
And I totally glossed over. I was like so interested in learning about West Point, but I totally glossed over the fact that you had spent 2 semesters in Egypt. So
no worries.
What was that like?
I really enjoyed it. I mean, it got postponed for a while because of COVID. And so it kind of ended up being my last 2 semesters of undergrad. But I really thought it was a great opportunity. Went to one semester, I went to the American University in Cairo, and then one to the public university in Cairo. And I think that was a great experience just to see what university life is like there. Also a different political system from like a political science perspective. That's really fascinating how that works in teaching. So I had a great time. I still have a lot of good friends, and I also did meet someone from YFU there. So I feel like the connection continues. That's the fascinating part. The exchange student actually was sat next to me in U.S. history.
That is wild.
Which is
gosh.
funny.
Yeah. We're everywhere.
Exactly. Really. I think when I applied for the grad school visa for the US, I was standing in front of the consulate in Frankfurt again, and I realized it's exactly 10 years ago that I was here.
That must have been such like a like full circle, honestly, like mind-boggling moment. So
It
when you
really
had that
was.
realization, how did that feel for you?
I think it really felt like trying to think about how much happened in between, kind of.
Yeah.
I'm here again. I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to, I mean, I'm not going to the same place, but I'm going to the US again.
Mm-hmm.
So much has changed. I'm now going in like a very different part of my life,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm also going fully by myself now. But I
Yeah.
think also realizing like all this, what came before, kind of prepared you for that moment, like having that experience in high school, already knowing people who can answer questions, but also people you can visit. I think I spent a couple of weeks, like a week before I started grad school in Michigan, which was great just to, before classes start,
Mm-hmm.
having like a home feeling, just
Yeah.
coming back home. And yeah.
And now you're back home in Germany. So what's next for you?
Yeah, I've slowly started settling in. Right now I'm looking where it's going to take me next career-wise, so that's still in the making. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think I'll probably be in Germany for a couple of years. I've always been interested in potentially looking into the foreign service later, so I'll
Mm-hmm.
definitely look into that.
Yeah.
So that could be one possibility. But also one of my host brothers is getting married next year in Michigan, so I'm excited. Hopefully I'll be able to go then. Go back to Ann Arbor for a little bit.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's kind of the next few things on the clock.
Sounds like a lot of excitement and a lot of great things to figure out. And I'm sure you'll figure it out just fine. It's going to be great for you. And I wish you the best of luck for everything going on for you in the future, and hope it's just as wonderful as your exchange experience was, and seems like it continues to be with the way that it's influencing life for you now. And that's just, it's wonderful. And I'm so
Thank you
happy
so
for you.
much. I think that's what I would say to like any
Yeah.
exchange student, like who's coming and starting their experiences. You never know where it may take you and who you might meet again sometimes in life, like much later on the other end of the world or just in a totally different context. And I know from a lot of friends, they've also met other exchange students from like Europe back again once they got back to Germany. And I think that's just the amazing part about it, that you can stay in contact with friends. I went to one friend's wedding in Michigan while I was in grad school, who I met in field hockey during one of my first days. So I think there's just so many great opportunities, and it's opening so many doors, which I really love. So just take every opportunity you get, and you never know where it may take you later.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's fantastic advice and something people should really take to heart after listening to your story. And next time you're in Michigan, you got to stop by YFU headquarters.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, show you a little bit more of like at least northern Lower Peninsula of Michigan.
Oh,
Show
that's
you around.
yeah. I would love to.
That. Awesome. All right. Well, we'll put it on the calendar at some point.
Exactly. I'll bring all the right gear.
Yeah. I don't know. There's quite a few Michigan State fans here in this office, so you and I might be fighting some people, but that's okay. We're
yeah.
tough.
I remember my high school, on the days that Michigan and Michigan State played, it was kind of a split. I mean, not a split, so it was probably 70-30, but there was some Michigan State supporters.
Awfully bold to be in Ann Arbor and be a Michigan State fan. Interesting choice there.
Brave.
Yeah, very brave. Oh yeah, commitment to being absolutely wrong. Anyway, but a couple more final questions before we end our time together for people who may want to keep up with what you're doing, or maybe they have questions, or maybe finding that they could use some advice for going on exchange, or even being a good host parent to an exchange student. Are you on social media publicly, and would you like to share any of those accounts?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm always happy to reach if you want to reach out for questions, or just have any other ideas or things you're worried about exchange and all that. Yeah. So I think I mostly, again, the age, I do still have a Facebook, but that's probably not very helpful. I will say I'm mostly on LinkedIn, which I don't know if everyone is using that, who's going on exchange. But if you want to reach out there, I just use my regular name, Julika Enslin.
Right.
Feel free to reach out. That is mostly what I am I'm on these days. Yeah. But yeah, if you have any questions, I'm always happy to answer them.
And I appreciate that, and We'll definitely make sure to put a link to your LinkedIn page here in the show notes so people can reach out. And as a final wrap up, I mean, we've talked about so many different moments and memories. I'm sure it's hard to keep track of everything, but is there one particular funny or special moment that stands out to you that we didn't get to touch on?
I think what, looking back, what was really, really special to me was our trip to DC, because I think it really created, again, one of those full circle moments later when I went for grad school. And I remember just at the time, 16-year-old Julika standing in front of the memorials and really being just flabbergasted by all the information, all the museums. And I think that was like a really, really special moment. And I think I wouldn't have been there again later if I hadn't been in Michigan with YFU. So that was great. And I'm really thankful for my host family for making all these trips possible, because I know that they are also organized a lot of great experiences for me that I benefited from all my life. So that was a really special moment, just DC. And as someone who's so interested in politics, it was just a great place to be and learn.
Wonderful. And totally off topic, but still within the same thing. Washington Monument is much bigger than you think it is.
It
When you
is.
see it in person, it's huge. But my gosh, so many full circle moments here on Life Exchange. We love a good full circle moment here. And so it's been so awesome hearing your story, hearing what you've been up to, and hearing what you're going to be continuing to do. Julika, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and learning more about you. And I just can't thank you enough for sharing your story and your time today.
Thank you so much. And I can't wait to come visit you in Michigan. So
Yes.
I hope,
Yes.
Thank you for the conversation. It was really great.
Oh, yay. Awesome. And thank you to our listeners who have tuned into this episode of Life Exchange Stories of Understanding. Make sure you're subscribed and following so you can check out the next stories from some more wonderful guests. Until next time, I've been your host, Kelsey Ross. Bye.
Listen to Life Exchange Stories of Understanding now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.